I thought I like to compare different approaches that we find in Buddhism. The ones that I want to share is Zen and Shin Buddhism, but also talk about Vipassana. Where do I start? Let's start with Vipassana. Actually, Vipassana, I see it very similar to Soto Zen, focused on technique of meditation and not get into koan, although there are elements of that that should come easy once you have established certain level of practice in shikantaza, which is just sit, or vipassana, meditation focused on inner body sensation or breathing. Those two, Dogen is famous for um, Soto Zen, and Vipassana are like friends. But I remember Hakuin from RInzai Zen at this moment, he has gone through certain technique very similar to Vipassana. And interestingly, in one of his books, what's the name of it? I forgot. He talks about very similar concept of Vipassana that came into Japan. And the practice is to focus on inner body sensation as you said, like in Vipassana. But the description is that there's a Seiju Rojin is master talking about practice, which is like imagine that you have a butter sitting on top of your head and then let it melt through. So that's the kind of a practice of what's the name of that? Nanso no ho. Nanso is, I think, the butter, and the ho is the practice. So that practice of meditating, sort of image of butter melting through, is very much like a vipassana when you practice inner body sensation, monitoring what's going on. And the purpose of it is just paying attention in real time, in presence, what's going on inside our body. Anapana is breathing, and in Zen practice, that's also common. What you do is breathe in and out and pay attention to the breathing. Or in Vipassana, they specifically focus on just under the nostril, so that your attention becomes very detailed, refined, that before going to Vipassana, they practice this for like 3-4 days in 10-day meditation course by Goenka. So 3-4 days, if you just focus on breathing, you really get into inner body sensation of what's happening, while there may be thought popping up, but you let go. Keep on coming back to the breathing. That's your main attention. And the next, following the anapana of breathing, next 5-6 days is into the whole inner body sensation. And that's where this Nanso no Ho, Nanso, the butter practice that I mentioned, that Hakuin, which is actually the RInzai practice that Hakuin was, but he was also going into the same technique at one part of his life when he had some mental problem, if you call it. And the symptom was he couldn't, I don't remember the exact situation, but he was not focusing on the breathing or meditation, but the mind is too disturbed, and as a result, he had some mental problem, if you call that. So this Nanson Ho, similar to Vipassana, he practiced, and he could get out of it, and that's the beginning of his deepening his practice and moving to koan that he went through. But back to what I was talking about was the Soto Zen, just the sit, Dogen, and Vipassana. There's similarity, although the Dogen has Shobogenzo, I think maybe 200 or so koans that he was explaining in writing, but that Shobogenzo was to be confined only in the practitioner, so it didn't get out to the society until, I don't know exactly, but like 100 years ago or something like that. And that then became accessible for the public. So there are books about it, description about all the koan, and interpretation. Interpretation is the wrong word because koan is not to be interpreted but experience the spirit of it in practice. But to help the idea, there may be certain level of description, and that's what Dogen did to a degree. But description is very intuitive, and therefore koan, to bridge the gap of the brain to heart. So not so much just emptying the brain, but brain get disturbed, and then you are to find koan practice to address when things happen. You can still maintain the calm, quiet mind, like a Shila Samadhi Panya, that Samadhi state, and then be able to process it. And because the mind moves in every which direction, and the idea of koan is whatever direction of thought may come. Some say there are 3,500 koans, and I know a person who has gone through all of that. So there are certain practice like that, not just sitting, but also working with the koan, so that you are equipped to face various issues in life in your mind. You have a way, or that is to help find the way by practicing koan. And the koan practice, you have one koan and sit and resolve it, or to be awakened to find the meaning of it. And in my case, I did some koan with Maezumi Roshi. The famous koan is ordinary mind is the way. Ordinary mind, yeah, that's the one. But that is a very straightforward koan in my view, connecting to even, of course, everything is connecting with each other, but the principal way of how you may see the practice of meditation, Vipassana, Anapana, inner body sensation, or breathing. And those two are, by the way, it's essentially very similar because they are both reflecting of how the body is functioning, breathing, of course, but the breathing changes because of the mind affect the breathing. So that's the way you see how you know yourself by meditation, but also inner body sensation too. When something happens, a threat, whatever, then the body responds. And if you get this refined sense, it's like a biofeedback. When something happens, instead of paying attention with the mind to grab that and play with it, you have the calm and quiet state of mind because of this practice, that instead of grabbing, you notice the change in your physiology, so to speak, and therefore it's like a reflection of what is happening in the mind by having this body reaction, the breathing change. If you're upset, the breathing change, or the blood go to the brain, or whatever that expression is. So you feel it immediately, and that triggers, it's anchoring to see you maintain the stable, calm and quiet mind instead of grabbing the idea and jump into this monkey mind state of anger or whatever the problem that you may go through with your ego especially. So those are the training ground to get out of ego, get out of the common way of using the mind one to the next, but rather to have a stable source within yourself, the heart I call it. So brain may chase something, but heart, if we can connect to that with the experience of the inner body sensation focus meditation or the breathing focus meditation, you have a stable core that you can establish to deal with the all the stuff that happens in daily life. So that's about the Soto Zen and Dogen, especially I talked about, and relating to that, I mentioned about the Vipassana. But as I mentioned, the Dogen has Shobo Genzo with koan. So he had his writing, but in terms of how to spread the idea of Soto Zen, just like a Vipassana, he didn't emphasize too much of the koan and principal idea of shikantaza, just to say. Whereas Hakuin or others in RInzai sect went into practice of koan along with meditation. So this sect, you may say that it's also focusing on the same thing in principle, that you have a core of stable being, and therefore you don't get lost in the brain. Stay in samadhi to bring out the wisdom, and the wisdom, when it comes out, may be seen like someone is solving the koan. So that's the way the koan was established in China by various saying of, or the practice or activity of the masters, and capture those from different settings and use that as a platform that you are flexible enough to deal with various situations, but not just depending on the setting still, and practice shikantaza or a vipassana type of idea, which may not touch on the koan practice. So koan is very interesting, and it's seen very paradoxical. The famous one, hear the sound, one hand clapping, or there are many koans. There are hundreds of thousands of them, and those are taken from different settings of the master interacting with the disciple or by himself. One of the ones that pops up in my mind is that the master said every morning, "Be careful not to be deluded. Yes, master," or something like that. So he's just talking to himself. Or there's a guy who said, people ask the question, he just point the finger, or just look at this, or didn't say anything. Meaning, don't be bothered, but be still and understand the meaning of one finger pointing, which is basically to point, have a calm and quiet mind. And if you have that sense, you may resolve within yourself without being told what to do. And the famous shouting of cats is very similar. RInzai used to practice, and the monks passing by may say cats. I'm not familiar about it, but I understand it because you may see people, your friend or whoever, talking rubbish or endlessly and trying to brag about something or whatever. You want to kind of shut them off by, actually in RInzai also kind of punch them, not just shouting cats, which is basically to point or maybe slapping your face. And there's some physical activities that can happen that's very dangerous. And talking about it, about this physical thing, in Soto Zen too. Vipassana, they don't do it. In Soto Zen, they call it Keisaku. Kei is like a surprise, and Saku, I think, was the heading, which is in meditation at certain frequency. Assistant monk may move around, and then with this Keisaku, the stick, hit the person's back. And when you are not able to focus in deep samadhi or inner body sensation, this guy may come and the guy sitting asks this guy to hit him, and then and continue meditation just to sit shikantaza. So koan is like a shaking the tree by certain phenomena, activity, or the words they use, and for us to get the point of it. Bodhidharma came from India, I think maybe almost 2,000 years ago, and his view is sitting meditation, but he had left some koan, or some practice or behavior as a koan. I think the famous one is, "Who are you?" was the king from China. And Bodhisattva says, "I don't know." And I laugh at it because I like the answer, because if you know who you are and how you behave, you're a master, but the mind, you cannot grasp it. So if you are to answer the question, "Who are you?" and if you say, "My name is Kyo," it's just a replacing of your existence with word, and thinking the words should answer the question of who you are. Or you can say, "I'm the architect" or the painter. That's one characterization, but that's not the essence of that person. Therefore, if you are serious about being in line with the way of Zen or Buddhism or enlightenment to manifest that state when you awaken, someone says, "Who are you?" and you may say, "Today it's raining," or something like that. I'm just made up. So you can say, "My name is Kyo," but that's too ordinary and kind of boring. You just stay in the mind. But if you are beyond that mind, you may talk about something else. And one answer for the Bodhidharma's case was, "I don't know." And the next question the king asked was, "If I donate lots of money to your practice to set up the temple, what kind of a benefit do you think I can get?" Or something like that. That's another koan. And his answer is, "Mukudoku." Mu is nothing. Kudoku is reward. So no reward. Again, the point is, if we understand it, well, again, understanding is not the right way, but the interpretation of that could be, if you seek for reward by putting money, you are dividing yourself or thinking of seeking to bring out the answer. You have to go beyond the seeking, because seeking is the mind activity. And if you are connected to the root, when you say, what's the benefit? Nothing. There's no reward. So that's briefly, the practice of koan, and capturing those words from many people, the monks, and use that as a guiding principle to see how much of the koan you can pass. And accordingly, you may establish certain level and found as you got the idea of Dhamma to pass the test. So I talked about Soto Zen, Vipassana, and RInzai Zen. I also talked about that's all I did. I thought about talking about the Shin Buddhism along with this. Well, maybe I'll do it. So those are the Zen and Vipassana, all kind of related to each other. And Shin Buddhism is very unique in its sense, especially developed in Japan, I want to say that, by Shinran. And the idea is, instead of sitting or meditating, whenever you have a chance, you say Namo Amida Butsu, which basically means I let myself go on, and follow Amida Buddha's saving. So it's the belief-based approach of letting go. In Zen, you let go of the mind. In Shin Buddhism, let go of the mind. In Zen, it's more related to meditation and koan. And Shin Buddhism is related to just the saying and the belief that Amida will save. I'm not going to go into detail of Amida's story, but basically, essentially, it's the same, and the Myokonin is very well established in that sense. So whenever something happens, they say, or in their mind, or they may not even say anything, but idea is Amida will save them. So noticing that, let go of yourself, Amida is like a law of nature to take over, to help, and they find the answer. One of the famous, well, there are many of them, but one of the ones that I remember just now is Osono saying, if you can say hi, meaning yes to everything, that's the practice. When you say hi, instead of hi, meaning yes, in Japanese, you can say Nami Amida Butsu. I'm letting go of myself, I'm following. Yes, no problem. So it's a very quick way, and you jump across. That's the word. What's the Japanese word? Jumping across instead of training, just snapping to have faith. Somewhat similar to Christianity, but not quite. There's deep devotion, and there's a process of like awakening, breaking through to be able to practice and live with them. And there's lots of stories I have posted about Myokonin, so if you're interested. Anyway, those are some of the thought that, whatever the reason, it popped up in my mind, and I just thought to share it in this occasion. May all beings be happy.